And we are rolling. Hello, my name is Andrew Luce with the Cantigny First Division Oral History Project. Today's date is November 6th, 2012, and I'm interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Hibler here at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, about his life and military service. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Let me start off. Where were you born and when?
All right. 51, almost 52 years ago. I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, on the southwest side of Indianapolis, 1961, March 14. Grew up on a family farm. I went to Decatur Central High School.
Can you tell me a little bit about your family?
My dad was a salesman. My mom was a stay-home mom. I'm the oldest of three brothers. My family farm has been in our family for now probably close to 150 years. It's had a little bit of all kind of livestock, so I kind of grew up with the woods, hunting type scenario with a lot of farm animals and various things, so kind of grew up with that kind of country lifestyle.
Did you grow up from a military family?
No, in fact, I was the first of my family of recent time to be in the military.
And you said you were the oldest of three brothers. Did that kind of put you in a leadership role?
Kind of put me in a leadership role. I've always, growing up, I always had an interest in the military. I wanted to be a police officer. And so once I got out of high school, I went to work for the Indiana State Police. I played sports in high school, basketball, a little bit of football, ran track. Was very interested in serving my country. I grew up very patriotic. I remember the American flag made a significant impact on me. Back in the day when you could say the Pledge of Allegiance and those type of things in school really kind of impacted me and meant something to me. I always seemed to feel like there was something, a greater cause than self, and I was that's one of those things you kind of sought out. And so as I was 19 years old, I got married right out of high school. And went to work for the Indiana State Police as a civilian employee for the State Police Department. And I went to work there in 1981, and they had a 3-year lag between when they were going to bring any new troopers on the department. And a couple of my friends who were troopers, who were also National Guardsmen, talked me into joining the National Guard. So I actually, on a noon lunch hour, while I was working at the State Office Building, walked, I think it was about 4.5 city blocks to Tyndall Armory and enlisted in the Indiana National Guard as an MP. So I entered service as a private E1 on the 8th of September, 1983.
Did you have any other motivations for joining the National Guard outside of?
Yeah, my biggest motivation at that time, we didn't have the college tuition. I think it was a GI Bill and things of that nature, but in me, it was all about service. It was about serving my country and being part of a team, part of defending the country. Of course, that time was during the Cold War, and the potential for the Soviet invasion or nuclear attack or something of that nature. And it was just a sense of being able to serve and be part of something. I went to basic training in January of 1983, so I had a little bit of delay from the time I signed. And I attended guard drills and stuff at the time I shipped off. In fact, it was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane when I flew down to basic training, and it was quite a significant impact, being away from home for the first time, flying on an airplane for the first time, and the infamous, you get there and meet your drill sergeant. And that was back before it was the kinder, gentler. We didn't have stress cards that they have today to deal with. They would stress us out to the max, but it was, I seemed to take to it real well.
You mentioned that you got married right out of high school. What were her feelings towards you going into the military?
Well, they had a family business, and that was where we were both young, and she had her vision of what we were going to do, and I had my vision of what I wanted to do, and the two didn't match real well. So she was not very supportive of the military. In fact, I got Dear John letters on a weekly basis while I was at basic training. That was back before internet and cell phone and all that, so the only communication we get is letters coming. And typically, and they would get out of sequence, which made things interesting, but she made it very clear she wasn't real happy with my choice to join the military. we had a child at the time, and ultimately then I had a son, and then ultimately had a daughter. I went to Fort McClellan, Alabama, through what they call one-station unit training, which meant I went for, I think at the time it was 18 weeks, where you go through basic training for 9 and then 9 weeks of military police training. And I came out as a trained military policeman, returned back to Indiana. In fact, during my basic training, I got special permission from my drill sergeant to go on leave. And I came back to Indiana and I had to come for a test for the Indiana State Police Department. And they allowed me to come back home and test for that. So as soon as I got back in May, I went back to work for the state police for about a month, and I went to the State Police Academy in July of that same year. So I actually graduated from Army Basic and AIT in May of 1983 and was sworn in as a Indiana State Trooper December 25th of 1983. So I started a dual career really at the same time.
Was training rigorous or easy for you going in?
Oh, I'm sure at the time it seemed, I never forget my first day. I didn't have a full understanding of how basic training worked, and we went to a reception station, and a reception station seemed pretty cool. They had pool tables, and it had TV and in the day room, and it was a matter of getting your company or your platoon filled as other people would come in, and there started to be a sense of something changing. Because you got there in civilian clothes, you got there where I never have had long hair, but some people had some fairly significant long hair. You didn't have your shots and all that. And as they started taking you through the process, there was like an indoctrination where pretty soon you wanted to be part of the ones that already had their uniforms issued. You didn't want to be part of the civilians over here. And it was I'll never forget that. I spent about a week and a half at the reception station. And as they started getting enough troops there to fill your platoon, we got issued our uniforms, got our shots, filled out, I don't know how many different forms, had to have all the various tests, and you make sure if you got any contraband, you turn it in here. I mean, they started setting the discipline from day one. I'll never forget, toward the end of that time when we knew we were getting ready to report to our company area, that's when you meet your actual drill sergeants. And it's like nobody wanted to eat. We went to the chow hall, and it was just silence, and everybody lost their appetite. And it's like you knew the impending, here comes your drill sergeants. And I'll never forget that, because we went to, there's like a break area outside the chow hall, and we were all nervously waiting our drill sergeants to arrive. Well, unbeknownst to us, they came in from a back direction, and one of the guys wasn't paying attention, and he stepped right back across the shine core frame of one of the drill instructors. And that set the tone for about the next 8 hours of pick your duffel bag up over your head, put your duffel bag down, front leaning rest position, all right, back on your feet, down, up, down, whatever. And you hear everything you saw on TV back in the day, the drill sergeants and some of the stuff they would come up with. You tried not to laugh because you didn't want to bring the attention on you, but there were a few people standing either right or left of me that were just, guys show up with rank. I had no rank. I was a private E1, slick collar. There'd be guys with PFC rank on, and they would ask, well, what did you do to earn that? Well, I went to college, or I enlisted a buddy, and that would just launch the drill sergeants. Oh, so you didn't do anything. They're just giving rank away. So it made me very happy that I was a private E1, because I just kind of blended right in with things. But it was very cold. I remember going to Alabama. I thought I'm going to the sunny South for the winter, January, and I found out very quickly that Alabama is not so warm in the wintertime, and we, at that reception station, we got to our company area that night, it was just incredible. They put us through a lot of routine, made us run, we went through the sand pit, then we go back over, duffel bags above your head, duffel bags down, to the point your arms just felt like they was hanging there, and then we'd have to take out our ID card. We had to stand in line to get checked into the company area, and I can remember you had to hold the ID card up next to your head, or pretty soon your arms are getting so heavy, and you find your head starting to turn because you want to keep that card up next to your ear, But that was our first night, and I think we got into our barracks at like 2 in the morning, and the drill sergeants gave us the right and left limits of, hey, this you shall do, this you shall not do. And I can remember just barely getting into bed, just in time for about 4:30 in the morning to ring around, and they get us up. And my first day that I can remember actually in the Army, they loaded us in the back of trucks, and I went to a battalion chow hall, and I was actually doing dishes, peeling potatoes, doing those type of things. And I thought, my first day in the military, I'm going to have dishpan hands. And I thought, wow, what did I get myself into? But from that point on, then once we got the platoons filled, the company filled, and we started in actual training, I mean, I loved it. It was sense of purpose, sense of direction. I got tested, leadership right away. I felt like I was stepping out, and I got to know those other strong leaders in the group, and we really we learned how to take each other's strengths and weaknesses and blend them together to make something greater than self. And it was an amazing accomplishment. You felt like when you graduated basic training, yet you really crossed the threshold, and we got through military police training. It was just like you felt like you were, 10 foot tall and bulletproof.
What was military police training like? What kind of techniques and tactics did MPs need to know?
Well, that's very interesting, because you think of law enforcement and MP, and this was when we were transitioning really away from what they call white hat duty, which we still do law and order to a certain extent, but it was mostly focused on combat operations, running routes security, area security, EPW at that time operations that ultimately has transitioned to detainee operations. But it was all the techniques, tactics, and procedures that we need to be proficient on the battlefield. As the battlefield became from a linear battlefield to a more asymmetrical type battlefield, and at that time, was still during the Cold War, which ended up years later. I found a chuckle at this, but I remember at MP school, they had one of the instructors come in. It was kind of a dimly lit studio, and he came in as like a shadowy figure up front speaking in Russian, English dialect obviously, but in a broken Russian, and it was supposed to be a Spetsnaz, which was their elite special forces of the Soviets that were designed for rear combat operations to parachute into the rear battlefield. And that was the main focus of the military police, was to be able to locate and hold that threat. And so it was one of those things to get us prepared. And I remember that was one of the big things I can remember that day when they brought that in, to really get it in our head that we were going to be responsible for that security in the rear part of the battlefield.
To you, what was the most significant training or educational experience during your actual training?
Basic and AIT?
Yeah.
I've had a bunch of, I've been through so many schools now. But through Basic and AIT, it was probably the first time, there was the old commercials back then that we're going to, we do more before 9 than some people do all day, and they're going to push you to the edge and make you go a little bit further and teach you new limits. I learned new limits about myself. I had grown up, my parents were pretty disciplined, especially me being the oldest. But it's like a new level. I learned the self-discipline that has stayed with me my whole life. Would I ever want to go back and redo basic training again? No, not really. But the experiences and the tools I put in my toolkit, I've carried my entire law enforcement and military career, and it served me well with multiple deployments.
What tools are you referring to?
From the self-discipline to the how to handle yourself, conflict resolution, decision-making, problem-solving, how to, when you think you've hit the wall, how you push a little bit further, and how to push a little bit further, how to pull within yourself, and how to pull like the most out of your teammates to get them to not quit, keep driving on. It's all about mission accomplishment. And the more that I interact with the civilian population, the more you realize the little extra edge that you have with having that in your toolkit.
So after basic, you went into the state police force with Indiana. Do you want to?
Sure. I mean, at the same time, I went back and I started as a National Guardsman, drilling 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. That was a great advertisement line at the time. At the same time, I became a state trooper, worked the road as a road officer. Ultimately, in about 1986, I became a member of the state police SWAT team. I spent about 10 years on the state police SWAT. Which it was like a really, we talk about the citizen soldier, and the skills that the military brought me enhanced what I was able to do with the law enforcement, and the skills I picked up as a state trooper benefited the military. And it was kind of and over the years, it's even become more pronounced than even what it was in the beginning. But the military saw some leadership in me. They sent me to PLDC. I served when I was a enlisted soldier, and I love telling this story because one thing we don't do good, and still today it's a challenge, is the administrative piece of it. And you remember I told the story I came in as a private E1. Well, typically, once you complete basic and AIT, and as my recruiter had told me, oh, you'll get promoted when you come back from basic and AIT. It's an automatic promotion to private and then ultimately PFC and then get you to specialist. Well, I came back and I spent probably 14, 15 months as a private E1. I went to basic training, or to our annual training at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, my first year with the National Guard unit. And it was amazing. I was selected as a soldier of the cycle. I got a $50 savings bond for the annual training. And I mean, I just stepped up, took a leadership role, and really did a lot of great things. And I was standing in a formation with the DISCOM. The MPs fell under DISCOM at the time. And the DISCOM commander came in, a full-bird colonel, who I got later in years. We became good friends, and it just awesome. He ended up being a 2-star general, the division commander, but he was a colonel at the time. And had my lieutenant trailing behind him in the formation. He went to each man and asked questions and such. And he got to me and took a look at my slick collar and said, you know, how long you been in the unit? And I told him, oh, I've been in here 14 months. And he asked me, he said, are you some kind of fuck up or something? He said, what's the deal here? And I said, well, no, sir. I said, I was selected a soldier of the cycle. This, whatever. And boy, he did a facing movement to my lieutenant, and he says, what in the world why isn't this soldier promoted? And I'm telling you, within the next 2 months, I went from E1 to E4. It was just like that. And I'll never forget that. It was Major General Chastain, but he was Colonel Chastain at the time, but he ended up being the 38th Infantry Division commander. Super great officer. And, you know, through your career, you identify with those, and there's certain leaders that you always take pieces and parts of the traits and you remember them, and there's other ones that's like, wow, I remember, I don't want to be like that. And he was one of the good guys, and was a fantastic, phenomenal leader. And that was my first experience with him, and of course, you know, I benefited from it. I became a specialist. But even as a specialist, I served as a fire team leader. That was back before we really did the corporal rank. As a E5, I went to PLDC, came back, served as when I made E5, they had me as a squad leader, which typically is a staff sergeant. As a staff sergeant, I served as assistant platoon sergeant. And about that time is when some of the leadership there took note of me, and they recommended I go to OCS, Officer Candidate School. So I did. I entered in 1986. I went to the Indiana Military Academy, started out in the class, was selected as a junior class president. My senior year, I became the senior battalion commander, and upon graduation was given the top leadership award, which was a nice stainless steel Colt 45. So it was a good time, and I got commissioned as a second lieutenant MP officer. And I wanted to be an aviator, but back then when they took a look at your career, saw I was a state trooper, prior service MP, it was only natural that they would make me a military police officer. And my whole career, with just a few exceptions, I've served as an MP.
So as you're ranking up throughout the years, did that encourage you to continue to rank up and become more of a leader?
It did. I mean, there's the personal challenges at home. I went through a divorce in 1985, finished up in 86 from my first wife. I got married again to my second wife in 1987. You know, all the family issues, trying to stay on track with the state police department, trying to find a way to get my education, to increase my education. Both state police and the military wanted you to have an education. So it was a balancing act, that citizen soldier thing, trying to be all, know all, do all. And every time you work real hard in one area, it seems like you'd let another area, you know, go for a while. And I say that because I started through my schools. I did the officer basic course, MP basic course at Fort McClellan, and excelled in the course. In fact, at the end, my instructor they offered me and wanted me to come on active duty. So I had an opportunity at that point to transition from being a civilian police officer and to go on to active duty. And I actually turned it down. It was right prior to the Panama invasion, and then it was 1988. And then shortly thereafter is when we got into Desert Shield. And by that time, I was an aide to a general. I'd served as a platoon leader with the 38th MP Company. In fact, interesting story, the way the National Guard worked at that time, there was only one MP company in the Indiana National Guard. So as an MP, you're there. I was an E1 in the company, or in the platoon, first platoon, and worked my way through the NCO chain. Well, when I became an officer, came back to 38th MP Company, what platoon do you think made me the platoon leader in? First platoon. So now the specialist who was breaking me in when I first came into the military is now my driver as platoon leader, which made for some very interesting, challenging times. Another specialist that came in with me is now my platoon sergeant. Okay, you see quite a sense of connectivity there, and some people might say nepotism or whatever, but that was the guard of that day. We were in the transition. We were the strategic reserve at that time. That was still the mindset. We always knew and felt that we could be much more than that. And a lot of times at that time there was a real rift and division between the active duty and the National Guard. And to the point you go to a lot of the training stuff, they would make the comments about, he's a National Guard, a no-go, NG, no-go. And that was a different culture, different time. As we went through Desert Shield and we saw what the Reserve Forces, National Guard could do, there was more inclusion in that. And like I said, when I went through the OBC, it was really a pretty pleasing experience, and I did real well with it. Came back, continued to move up through the state police, with the state police department. Ended up, my second wife and I, we ended up with 4 kids. But this was all still during the Cold War period for the most part, and all the challenges that came with that, trying to feed a family, trying to get a little bit of college in, and so on. And a couple of defining moments that I had, I was the executive officer for headquarters, which is now the Joint Force Headquarters, but then it was STARC, State Area Regional Command. And one day this sergeant comes up to me with a piece of paper and puts it before me and says, "Here, sir, I need you to sign this." Yeah, okay, what's this? "Well, sir, if you don't get your schools completed," which I had an officer advanced course I need to knock out, I need to finish my bachelor's degree, and I had to get the CAS Cube. And he said, "If you don't get that done," he says, "you're going to be back to being sergeant again." And that was a significant emotional event because I'd been working my police career and then kind of let my military career slide a bit. So I did what I had to. I bared down, and from that point on, I never fell behind in a school. I got my officer advanced course knocked out in the fall of '99. I got my CAS Cube knocked out in January of 2000. I finished my bachelor's degree then as well. Went ahead and enrolled in a master's program, excelled, CGSC, excelled in the courses there, and began feeling good. I started picking up more of confidence, more skill sets on staff work, staff organization, MDMP, military decision-making process. Of course, going through the school, learning MDMP, I still remember a lot of people, "Oh yeah, you'll learn this stuff, but you'll never use it. You'll never use it, never use it." I come out of the school, and by this time I'm a captain, and I spent a little bit of time as a transportation company commander, which is the only time I haven't been an MP, which ended up benefiting me because I would have probably focused too much on the MP part, not on the command part. So that truck company gave me the opportunity to step out of my comfort zone and just be a commander and learn how to be a company commander. And that gave me a little more tools in my toolbox. But when I got done and I was getting ready to get promoted to major, they brought me into the 76th Brigade, and that was back when we first started having the SIBs. Well, the 76th Brigade is one of the most deployed National Guard combat brigades to date. And I became part of that organization, and Major General Umbarger at the time was Brigadier General Umbarger, stood up that unit. And he's currently our Adjutant General in the state of Indiana, and they did it right. I mean, they set the standard for SIB. And I got into that organization and learned the MDMP. We were doing multiple MDP at the same time. They participated in JROTC or JRTC. They were the premier unit in the state of Indiana. They had a lot of the active duty soldiers would come off active duty, would come to the Indiana Guard, and would go right into the 76th Brigade. It was an amazing 3-year experience that I had with the brigade. In fact, I left for a brief time, but that's when September 11 happened. The unit got alerted they were going to be deployed, and they brought me back to the brigade. I served as their provost marshal. It was quite an experience. I can remember going to the armory. We went to the armory several times during the week, just knowing we were going to get that call to go. Never came. And so ultimately they moved me out of the 76th Brigade. I became the Assistant Provost Marshal for the 30th Infantry Division and got tasked to go to Bosnia in 2004 as part of S-415. The Provost Marshal at the time was medically unqualified to go, and so they bumped me up and I served as the Provost Marshal. I was the last U.S. Provost Marshal in Bosnia. I went from December, actually we moved in December of 03, got in the country I think March of 04 through to December of 04. We were in Bosnia. I led all law enforcement operations there. We did searches for persons that died for war crimes and locating weapon cache sites in the country. It was one of the best and worst experiences of my life. And I say that because by this time I'd been married close to 18 years or so, or 17 years in my second marriage, and my wife left me while I was overseas. So I literally got the Dear John letter as I'm getting into country, and so you're trying to deal with the mission in front of you, and here's your family 7-8 hours and however many thousand miles away, and trying to deal with all those variety of issues. And I had 4 kids, and I found out she basically was taking all my money. In fact, took all my money. So I'm serving as a major for the United States, and free gratis, I guess. So I just poured myself into my work. I was outside the wire virtually every day. I traveled all over Bosnia, from Hans Pijesak to Bijeljina to Zvornik to I went to Srebrenica multiple times, and if you're familiar with Srebrenica, it was the scene of the horrific genocide that really catapulted the United States to get involved into Bosnia. I've traveled the Drina, up the Drina River, been on the Sava River, Brčko district, just Doboj, all over Bosnia. I met all the police departments, worked to help professionalize the police departments. My first day, when we did our right seat, left seat, we swapped out. The 34th Division had been there prior to us, and we swapped out. In the day we took over, we had like 3 major incidents happen. It was like the worst mission readiness exercise they could ever throw on you for real. We had, they thought one of the PIFWICs or persons died for war crime was at a monastery, and they had a special ops deal, go try to get them, and that didn't go real well, so we had to launch aircraft and everything. We had a strike or a riot happen that I had to handle it, and then we had a couple other just small incidents happen on post that was just like multiple things happening that really tested our command structure out. It was interesting.
Based on those experiences that you had in Bosnia, what lessons did you learn from that?
It expanded my frame of reference and my knowledge, not only my situational awareness, dealing with the Bosnian people. It was the first time I dealt with that dramatically different of a culture. They're awesome. Whether it was the Serbian side or the Bosnian side, the Croat side, it didn't really matter. They liked Americans. They just didn't like one another. And the interaction dealing with interpreters, and it's like it just took me to a whole nother level of professionalism in dealing with the interagencies and with a lot of the special operation type stuff that we did. I did not feel like the same person when I got done with that experience. It was peacekeeping, largely. There was some risk and danger inherent to it, but compared to what our brothers and sisters were dealing with in Iraq, Afghanistan, it paled in comparison. While I was there as the Provost Marshal is when Abu Ghraib happened in Iraq. So, I mean, it sent reverberation clear, throughout the military, and obviously into Bosnia, because we would engage, and at times, we had some detention issues that we had to get people specially trained for to make sure we didn't have any of the fallout from Abu Ghraib occur in Bosnia.
Now, when you mention professionalism with the military police, what does that mean to you?
Well, our motto is of the troops, for the troops. I am a career MP, and we had a law and order mission over there. We had some police tactical operations over that we ran. I will tell you today, while the U.S. Army gave me a lot of military police experience and training and such, the thing that carried the day over there was my civilian law enforcement training and experience. And my commanders, if you went and talked to our chief of staff, the colonel, even the general who was the task force commander, there were several of us. There was a group of probably 20 of us who were civilian law enforcement officers. And by the nature of the stuff that they had us do, they really reached out and tapped us and brought us in and formed us. And we had the civilian law enforcement background because by this time it's a peacekeeping mission. So it's not like, just to kick doors in and do things. You had to have it, that escalation of force continuum, the discipline to be able to execute a lot of these missions, and the decision-making ability to be able to, as the situation changed right before your eyes and you started finding things. We discovered and learned a lot. We exercised police intelligence operations, which really integrated in with the intel piece of it over there, and gained a lot of information just by the way we operated. Police professionalism is us doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, and we did a lot of that.
Backtracking a little bit, where were you on September 11th?
Never forget that. That day was a significant day to me. I had just interviewed with the Indiana State Police. I'd been a squad leader, problem-oriented or problem-oriented policing, like a community policing sergeant. And I just interviewed for the Assistant District Command First Sergeant position, and I'd actually gotten selected for it, which was supposed to start the following week. But the lieutenant of the district west of Indianapolis was on vacation, actually bear hunting in Michigan. And so when September 11 happened, the area captain called me up and said, you're the first sergeant, you get out to the post, take command of the post. So on September 11, I had just left the area high school, putting on a program at the high school. When I heard about the attacks, instantaneously I knew. I had just been in Germany in July of 2001, and while we were there was a threat, a bin Laden type threat, which tightened security while we were there. So once we heard the second tower got hit, it was a no-brainer. You figured kind of what was going on. So I can remember, got to the state police post, started fielding calls, and the public was just in an absolute panic. A lot of the phone calls that were coming in. In our area, we've got a mosque that has always been of controversy, and a lot of the neighbors from around there were calling, to the point I had some little old lady on the phone. The dispatcher says, hey, First Sergeant, come here, take this phone call. And when I took it, this little old lady was convinced bin Laden was in the basement of the mosque there. And, it's just the way people thought. And, people were scared. It was, that's just the time it was. I remember in the days and weeks that followed, the cars flying the American flags and, the American patriotism, and which was unlike what we'd seen in our lifetime. But the sad part was, it seemed like in the weeks and months and years to follow, that all kind of faded, if that makes sense. And I think, you were talking Bosnia, I think while as great as it was while I was in the country and all the things I learned and picked up in additional experience, probably the biggest culture shock is once I come back home. And, I saw families in Bosnia, what they took, it was a very, very family-oriented environment and society over there. And to come back here and you get your first, back into the American society, and you realize how kind of self-centered and selfish we are. And I kind of remembered that. And the things that were so important that people just are about, they can't do it. It's there's families in certain parts of Bosnia that they're not sure when they got up every day if they're going to be able to feed their family. And it's just, that kind of stuff kind of hit. And then I went back to work with the state police department, and just didn't feel like the same person when I came back to work. You having that experience, and you got that global vision, global viewpoint. Then all of a sudden now you're back in your little patrol zone. You're a little part of the world. And then you listen to the gripes and the complaints and such from your troops, from the public and stuff, and it's like the perspective is lost somewhere. So,
you mentioned before we started the cameras rolling that you also took part in relief efforts for Hurricane Katrina. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, Hurricane Katrina. Okay, I came back in 2004, and essentially I came back to nothing because ex-wife, we had a small farm out in west central Indiana. She had the farm. I I wasn't able to see my kids for a while, no money, whatever, so I was getting back in the groove and basically went back to work with state police. And shortly after, with the divorce, I met my current wife. And she's a former Air Force. Her dad was an Air Force colonel. And I finally found somebody that kind of can connect and understand the military a little bit better. And if not for her, I don't know what I would have done. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. And she has been phenomenal. And then shortly thereafter, she and I have our youngest daughter, who's now 6. And so I say all that because Hurricane Katrina. I had met my current wife, and we had planned to go to Gatlinburg, Tennessee to get married in September of 2005. And this big hurricane rolls in. And I'm the Division Provost Marshal for the 38th Infantry Division, and I get notified that we are mobilizing to the state of Mississippi to be the command and control headquarters and run all relief operations in Mississippi. So I had to ask the Chief of Staff to have a reprieve for a little bit so I could rapidly go to Gatlinburg to get married and have a couple days before I reported down to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. And so I sent one of my operations NCO down in my stead, and he was part of the torch team that went into Mississippi to get things set for me. And my wife and I, we made a quick trip down to Gatlinburg, got married, and I got married on a Tuesday, I believe, and by Friday I was on an airplane, and for the next 2 months I was down in Mississippi. And ultimately when Rita hit, they sent me as part of the torch team over to Louisiana, and I actually weathered out Rita in a underground or in a bunker at Fort Polk. So but I worked with all civilian law enforcement. We had like 1,200 MPs down there, and I was a senior MP advisor to the General Vadnais, who was Major General Vadnais was the 38th Infantry Division commander, and he worked basically for the TAG of Mississippi and the Adjutant General of Mississippi because they had no forces left after Katrina, and we did all the relief efforts down there, and the most devastation I've ever seen in my life. And spent days from Gulfport up and down the shoreline, and I've got thousands of pictures of just incredible devastation that ships inland. The smell, I'll never forget the smell of just horrid. So,
how did Katrina then compare to what you saw maybe in Iraq or Bosnia?
It's different. It's just it's on our homeland. Mm-hmm. And the response was incredible, but then again, the disorganization of that response was ever evident. People bringing clothes down there and all kinds of stuff, and they would go to shopping centers, and it'd be like clothes for relief supplies. They would just put them there, and then a big rain would come along and just drench everything, and then here all this stuff that was provided for them was just, they'd have people showing up for help and relief of various kinds. And no organization. It didn't. It was very evident that there was this disarray. Now, fortunately, in all credit, the 38th Division got there. General Vadnais had vision. He knew what needed to be done, and we started getting things organized, and we started getting things in place. And we did a real good integration with the local law enforcement that came down there, which the ironic thing was the Indiana State Police and a contingent of Indiana troopers down there, and to see the Indiana State Police cars with the Gulf in the background as they're driving along the beaches was just an interesting sight, to say the least. So I got to work with a lot of my law enforcement peers while we were down there.
Looking back on that particular experience, how did that affect you as a citizen and a soldier in the National Guard?
The thanks that we got from the citizens down there was genuine. It was real. There was a sense of relief. There was a sense of panic when we went rolling in. We went into the areas down there that it almost looked like it just got wiped away, with a sense when the Guard was on the ground there, the National Guard rolled in. I mean, you felt the people just this sigh of relief seeing us there. I mean, they immediately got to work, whether it was medical support, whether it was the engineers doing their thing, whether it was the military police directing, guiding, providing security. It was one of those things that you just knew it was the real deal. They really were thankful. They were happy that we were there. Until we got there, they had nothing. The local law enforcement tried to do what they could, but I mean, they were victims as well. And I think Sir Robert Peel said, about the police are the public, and the public are the police. The police are just full-time members of the public who are supposed to give their full-time attention, to that. And, when their families are devastated, it's kind of hard for them to fulfill that. And so we rolled in there, and we were able to fill that void for them.
Then, fast forwarding a little bit after Hurricane Katrina, when were you commissioned for active duty for Iraq?
Okay, I came back and spent the next couple years basically. This actually is a pretty interesting story, because I was back at the Indiana State Police, working as the Assistant District Commander of the post West Central Indiana, and I got notified that they were trying to find a senior military policeman. We were standing up a brand new unit called the 193rd Military Police Detachment. It was called a BLD. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a Brigade Liaison Detachment. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a career MP. Had no clue what it was. But fortunately, I had gone through MP pre-command. And when I went through MP pre-command, I met this young colonel who now is General Inch. He was my classmate. And he actually did a great presentation, because he was called in during Abu Ghraib and actually wrote a lot of the paper and the work and the investigation on what happened in Abu Ghraib. He ultimately was the U.S. Army Disciplinary Barracks Commander at Leavenworth. And he and I stayed in contact and maintained communication, and I actually called him up. He's one of the few people who knew what the BLD was, because he helped in the designing of the BLD, that with the war, to have an MP brigade who was trained in detainee ops, we were getting short on. And a Brigade Liaison Detachment was a National Guard or Army Reserve entity that they could bring in that provided the capabilities when attached to a combat support MP brigade that gave them the capabilities to do detention ops. So I had 5 captains. Besides, I was a senior military police officer. I had an executive officer, a deputy who was an MP officer. I had a master sergeant who was MP. I had a liaison officer that was an MP. And then I had a driver that was an MP, and then I had 2 clerks. Then I have 5 captain positions, which was medical service corps officer, engineer, transportation, quartermaster, and I think I want to say ordnance. No, I'm sorry, JAG. We had a JAG officer. Those 5 capabilities, along with us, were able to plug into an MP brigade and make them into a detainee ops type MP brigade. So the Indiana Guard decided to send me, and I was going to stand up this unit, and I was currently the 38th Division Provost Marshal. So I finished up a warfighter exercise at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and I started putting together my team that I was going to take to Iraq. And with the Guard, which is different than active duty, I can actually handpick a lot of my people. And so the guy who had been my ops or my NCOIC in Bosnia, Master Sergeant, I snagged him to go with me. I also could go 1 over strength, so I picked another Master Sergeant who had also been a First Sergeant in the MP company, who had a wealth of experience in the MP world. The clerk I had 1 clerk who was a trained medic at 42 Alpha and an MP, so I was able to take him who could fulfill all 3 jobs. The JAG was a judge, a sitting judge in one of the counties that I worked, and so we started putting this team together. And I got most of them on the rotation to go with me to Leavenworth, Kansas for the Division Warfighter. And while we were there, Colonel Inch at the time was the disciplinary barracks commander and actually got us concurrent training. So when we weren't working our shifts for the Warfighter, we went over to the disciplinary barracks, and he had 31 Echoes, correction officers, that were able to work with our guys, provide them all kinds of material guidance and stuff, and it was just phenomenal. The training that we received and the exposure and stuff that we got when we were at Leavenworth. But it was so beneficial by the time we got down the road. I also sent 3 of my NCOs to get 31 Echo certified at Fort Leonard Wood, which was a separate school that we were able to do. Not really required, but we knew it would pay huge dividends when we got downrange. Well, at the same time, I start researching to try to find out. And the way the rotation was working at the time is you went as a separate entity. The 193rd was going to just deploy. But we knew we were going to plug into an MP brigade. So I just happened to get on the phone, and when I was in Bosnia, Colonel Nevin was our chief of staff. He and I had never met before we went to Bosnia. He's a Michigan National Guardsman, but we formed a great bond, friendship, whatever you want to call it, while we were in Bosnia. Just through a lot of the stuff we had to do, we had a great respect for one another. And he was one of the few people that I shared my personal, the fact my wife had left me and all this while we were in Bosnia, and he was a true friend, really helped get me through that whole process. And so I called him. I said, hey, sir, you know, I'm going to be put in charge of the 193rd MP Detachment to go to Iraq. I'm going to be doing detainee ops, blah, blah, blah. He stopped me mid-sentence. He says, well, guess what? I just picked up command of the 177 MP Brigade out of Michigan, and I'm going to pick up my star. I'm taking them to Iraq. I'm going to be responsible for all detainee ops in theater. He was going to be my boss again. And he and I didn't realize it until that phone conversation. So from that moment, we forged again and did a lot of things that was really against how, I won't say against doctrine, but it's just using some common sense, thinking outside the box. We started doing concurrent training. We started really understanding what a BLD did and how it was supposed to fit into brigade. So we started training at Fort Custer as early as March of '07. And we were able to kind of start forging this bond between the two organizations where it was seamless. Well, as it turned out, he didn't have a very strong chief of staff, and he actually fired his chief of staff. When he did, he picked up the phone and called Major General Umbarger, the Indiana National Guard tag, and by name requested me to fill the void to be his chief of staff. So they agreed, and they had to figure out all the logistics of how to do it, but essentially I mobilized early and went with the 177, and I had a dual role as their chief of staff as well as commander of the 193rd MP Det. Okay? So actually we moved and went to Fort Bliss for our to the mobilization site in May of '07, and then my 193rd BLD was about 5 to 6 weeks behind us. So I left my deputy in charge of the BLD, and I got down to Fort Bliss, and we started about 80 days or so of pre-mob training, and we did all kinds of things. When I showed up, I actually went to Michigan, Taylor, Michigan's where the unit's based out of, and I went up there beforehand, and the only person I really knew in the organization was General Nevin. So everybody else I had to learn. And there were a couple of Michigan State troopers that I got to be pretty good friends with. One of them was the command sergeant major. One of them was the general's driver. And then I started learning and building and forging relationships with all the rest of these Michigan National Guardsmen. I had to try to earn credibility that I'm now going as their chief of staff. And they had to learn me, I had to learn them. So we had a very interesting time as we started developing, going through, and I've got lasting friendships today with a lot of those individuals that it was just an incredible experience. So we got into country shortly after July 4th, because we got to come home for a couple of days over July 4th of '07, and I'd say probably by July 7th or 8th, I can't remember the exact date, we were in country. We're actually in Kuwait at Camp Buren. And never forget, it was like, I don't know, 130 some degrees the day we got in Kuwait. I thought, we trained at Fort Bliss, so I thought I knew what heat was like. Got down there, and it was incredible. The incredible experience there at Buren. But you just kind of felt like you're in this holding. You know, they're sitting there waiting to go into country. And you start getting acclimated to the temperature and everything, and the time change, because it really works on your body.
What kind of training and preparation did you have for these detainee operations before you went in?
Well, Fort Bliss was pretty exclusive to the detainee ops itself. They actually built mock detention facilities down there. One of the key things that we did that didn't realize how important it was at the time, we would train all day long. And it was hot in the deserts of Texas, and then of course we go across the state line a little bit, and there was a lot of desert out there that we train in. But we would get up a lot of times 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go back into Fort Bliss and go to a secure VTC, and we'd actually do in-country talks to the 16th MP Brigade, was who we replaced in theater, and they had a Sunday, especially every Sunday, they would have a video conference about the current updates on detainee ops. So we would actually be able to real-time communicate with them about what was going on in development downrange, because this was going into the surge, and of course the detainee ops population was just exploding, to say the least. I can't even remember numbers. It was like the first time I heard how many detainees we'd be dealing with was like 15, 16,000, then it was like 18,000. It just kept growing during the surge. And by the time we got into country, I believe there was like 22,000 detainees that we had in detention. And during the time we were there, I think we maxed out a little over 25,000.
So while you're over in Iraq managing all these detainees, what was your role as Chief of Staff then?
Well, I'm going to back up for a second and finish the training question, because a couple of things we learned from Abu Ghraib. We did a lot of studying of Abu Ghraib, the things that went right, the things that went wrong. You know, one of the big things was the involvement in the command emphasis and command leadership. And we had a pretty good pack between General Nevin, Colonel Mike Stone was our deputy commander, and then myself, and then Command Sergeant Major Michael. And we were kind of the command team. And we were going to make sure we had a command presence at the detention facilities. And one thing we knew is the Bible's AR 190-8, which is everything you're required to do with detainees and everything you're prohibited to do with detainees, and we knew that like the back of our hand. We made sure that we absolutely enforced the letter of the law. If any allegation of misconduct with a detainee, we rapidly did, a 15-6 investigation. We made sure we got to the bottom of it, so nothing was going to happen on our watch. It was all about care and custody of detainees. I talked early on about the different leaders, and I've had some very corrosive leaders in my 30-year military career, and there's some that just, will always be dear to me and part of who I am today based on that. My life, I backed up earlier. I was a general's aide at one point in time, a guy named Brigadier General Frank Hughes, and today he's still daily. We probably exchange 5, 6, 7 emails. Retired school teacher, taught me so much about being an officer back in the early 90s. The other person is General Mike Nevin. He is probably as close a friend that, he was a leader, a mentor. He and I almost have we're the same age. So we've walked a lot of the same miles together. And the things he taught us and the way he instilled leadership, for example, as the brigade commander, he had all these other units coming into us. He met each and every single soldier at the airport when they got off the plane and shook hands. He shook thousands of hands. There was different times. We had 4,500 up to 6,000 during the surge. There's different numbers of troops on the ground depending on what day and what point during the surge. And he shook virtually every single soldier's hand. Private Smith, Private Smuckatelli, it didn't matter. He shook their hand, looked them in the eye, and I'm your commander. So everybody knew who he was. And it was amazing. He'd get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and go meet airplanes coming in. And so he started from day one establishing who his command style, his command leadership. We got to Fort Bliss. The 4 of us, the command team, went through every bit of training that the soldiers went through, to include doing I can remember us low crawling in the desert of Fort Bliss. And there was a paint gun where they were, we had reactive paint guns shooting at us. I can remember us out there and stuff. And the instructors on the course were in awe. You got a 1-star general low crawl, and they said, "Sir, we so greatly appreciate. We've got brigade commanders that come in here that refuse, colonels who refuse to do this stuff. We can now tell them we had a 1-star general out here crawling." And that's just his leadership style. So when we got into country, primarily my responsibility as Chief of Staff, I had kind of a dual purpose. One was to coordinate the staff and all staff operations, staff functions. Secondly, as Commander 193rd BLD, I did all high-profile handling of all the high-profile detainees. I had 67 missions outside the wire, dealing with about 110 high-profile detainee transfers. It was things that we did release operations because we're taking detainees in, we're letting certain detainees out, and there were certain things that it was there were reasons higher than what I know why hey, we're going to release these certain detainees. I know we ran MENFRIC boards, which basically as detainees would come through and we find out they weren't doing they've been model prisoners or detainees, then we could be able to transfer them. So there was a lot of different things there. We did all Con Air operations. And what that basically was, when the detainees had come into Victory Base, there was only a very small holding facility there. We had another facility south that was our main holding facility, so we had to schedule and get them, do all the air transports. If they came in for court, if they had medical issues, if they had whatever, we had to schedule and plan that. So my BLD had to know by their detainee ID number where any detainee was at any given point in the day. So we would work all that. We also found, because of the surge, they're detainees to a certain point. But we're also trying to get the rule of law established in Iraq and facilitate that. So as these detainees would go to court, and all of a sudden now they get convicted in a civilian court, well, now they're no longer detainees, now they're convicts, Iraqi convicts. And one of the things that hadn't been, until we got there, they hadn't figured out how to do was how to get them transferred back into Iraqi care and custody. And my group was able to do that while we were over there as well. So we figured out how to work with the criminal justice system to get them into the Iraqi Department of Corrections. And so we would run a route where we would move detainees from being detainees to become convicts, if you would, into the correction system. And we also help facilitate releases of people out of their correction system back into the society. So when we had all kinds of concurrent operations going on with detention, we really worked COIN, counterinsurgency operations inside the wire. I'll never forget, we had about 900 juveniles at one point in time, but we opened up a school. And we started educating them. We started teaching them the language. We started having different imams come in and teach them really what their religion, because they, at that point, they only did what they were told, or knew about it what they were told by, in some cases, Al-Qaeda. I remember we had a young kid that was like 9 years old that I think he made enough money for his family for a year placing IEDs. But he was recruited by Al-Qaeda. But we got these kids in there. We had a soccer stadium set up for them in a kind of a safe area so we could get them exercise, to the point that when we got ready to release a lot of these kids, the parents didn't want to come get them because they were safe with the U.S. military. They were getting educated. They were having medical care. They were getting fed. They were protected. So they want to leave them with us.
While over in Iraq, and that must have been very delicate work. What was the toughest part of your job?
Toughest part? Well, the long hours. It was a combination of things. Number one, being away from home, because this time I had a very, very good marriage, very good. I've got my family back home, so I'm trying to communicate with them. And there was a lot of different blackouts because during the surge, we were getting rocketed quite frequently. And you could pretty well, it was kind of be a joke, but we all knew that whenever you saw, if the lake around Awfall Palace, if there was no movement on the lake, no wind, and it looked like glass, they were going to be sending rockets in. And you just kind of knew that. And it was pretty sure. And we ended up moving a couple times, and I guess to understand this, and this is, we learn about joint operations. When we got in country, we hadn't been there very long at all, and we were supposed to be at Lost Lake or out on one area, and that's where the brigade headquarters had been since the start of the war for detainee ops. And we worked for Task Force 134, and there was a two-star Marine general who was out there, and they had me assemble the staff when we first got there at the visitor center, and he was going to kind of an in-brief with us, and we're thinking, oh, it's going to be a welcome to the team type lecture and everything. So I assembled the staff. Of course, the general was there, the deputy commander, myself, and all of our, S sections and stuff. And the Marine general came in and lit into us about, you're no longer National Guard, you're not civilians anymore, this is war, blah, blah, blah. And he starts giving it, and we're like, are you kidding me? It's like we've been mobbing for like 80 days to get here. Yeah, we're tracking that we're not, not back on the avenue type thing. And it was kind of interesting because that was just his perception at the time. I got to know a little bit more about his personality, and actually he ended up being a pretty good guy to work for in the end. Once he got to know us, we got to know him. They started learning the civilian skill sets we brought to bear in the theater were combat enhancers. They were combat multipliers. We had a group of the old Ba'ath Party officials that was in care and custody. Nobody could figure out what to do with them from the start of the war till now. They just remained in our custody, and nobody had really cracked the code on what to do. And as we started thinking about, we're going to be leaving this country, how do we get them transferred over? And it had been one of those too hard to do problem sets. And we had our deputy commander was a corporate attorney up in Michigan, and a brilliant man, one of the smartest men I have ever run across in my life. And he started working with the U.S. Embassy, Ambassador Crocker, and actually working with the Iraqi government, had a great rapport with the Iraqi government, and we figured it out. My BLD guys went out and did all the legwork to figure out how to make sure we, for the care and custody for the transfer, but we were able to get that crack. That was just one thing that by the civilian skill set really helped us with, and the relationships. And that was the other thing. General Nevin always taught relationships and how important relationships are. And we built some tremendous relationships, not only among the military personnel there, but a lot of our civilian people, as well as we had a lot of the Brits helping us, working with us, the Aussies. We had some great relationships.
How did you interact with the British and the Aussies?
Oh, still one of the British guys. I mean, he's one of my best friends. This guy was just phenomenal. And his name was Steve too. And we just say, hey Steve, how you doing? He did a lot of the strategic stuff. And then we would meet for strategic engagements, and he and I went on several different missions and stuff together, and he was just a joy to work with. I mean, just awesome guy, workaholic, these kind of people that you're there, and you're going through the same stuff with. Because that environment over there much different than Bosnia, obviously. From the rocket attacks to, I still remember, you talking about the significant events. First time I went to a chow hall during the surge, and I'm expecting, this huge amount of troops. I forget numbers, but huge numbers of troops there. So I'm expecting to see ACUs everywhere. And I remember the first time I went to chow hall, I'm looking around, and I'm like, hey, we're outnumbered by civilian contractors. What's up with this? Or third country nationals that were there. And it's just kind of course, I'm at Victory Base, which is one of the largest for the civilians, but the amount of civilian contractors was incredible. I just couldn't believe it. And it was kind of a culture shock thing. And as things picked up, I mean, you knew the times when there was heavy troop at the chow hall and such, but also you had the third country nationals that were coming in and working, and at times they were aiding the enemy, and we'd capture them there, doing things from helping adjust in fire on rocket attacks or whatever. So you always had to watch your back, whatever you were doing.
You mentioned before that you went on 67 missions outside the wire, and you also experienced rocket attacks. What were your feelings when you made contact?
I can remember, here I am, a career veteran state trooper who'd been 10 years on a SWAT team, and I'm thinking I know what danger is. I got it. And my first week over there, I went out with some of the 16th MP Brigade guys, and we had to go do some detainee transfers. When you first get in the country, you only got so many rounds, and I hadn't got my combat load yet, and I still remember going outside the wire, and one of the guys said, don't worry about it, we're just passengers in the vehicles. And I'm like, that's not how I trained. I want to make sure. So I went and I rounded up, and I got my rounds to make sure if I went outside the wire. And we went out earlier in the day and went up Route Irish, and this is my first time outside the wire. I mean, that's really, it's wow. You're outside the wire, and the first time you've been training for it, well, now here you are, you're going past the Iraqi, different apartment complexes and stuff like that. And you'll hear weapons fire. You'll hear, a variety of different things. And we did one of the engagements where we ended up going to one of Saddam's old palaces and met up with some of the governmental officials and did some paperwork exchange. And before we ever did the paperwork exchange, I mean, the thing you do, you kind of strip down out of your body armor and all that, because you're in this safe area and you're going inside this palace. And I can remember this felt real uncomfortable. My first time, it kind of felt you're like looking around, making sure that everything's all good. And we went inside, and they're watching the World Cup soccer, because this is when Iraq in 07, when Iraq was in the World Cup soccer thing. So we're watching soccer and drinking chai tea first before we did any paperwork. And so we watched that for a little bit, and then we ended up leaving. And I remember how hot it was. I remember, I'm in an air-conditioned Humvee. Well, that's just hot air blowing on you is the air conditioning. And we got back to base, and it was just, soaked. And it was just a few hours later, we had to go back out again. Another rapid mission kind of came up. We had to go cover the same territory again. And I remember going back out the gate, and as we're heading up Route Irish, well, all of a sudden I see this dead animal laying there that hadn't been there before. It's like I just went out 2 hours ago, and this animal hadn't been there. On our training, you know, they're talking about IEDs. Oh, hey, they'll use dead animals. And I can remember saying, I just knew that thing was going to go off when we went by it. And I was just, you know, kind of waiting for the bang. And it didn't, you know, it didn't. And it's just, that's the kind of things, you know, over there, what you expect, you didn't get. And when you didn't expect things, it would happen. There was a old bombed out hotel that virtually every time we go past it, if the Iraqi police would get in front of your convoy and slow you down, you were going to take sniper fire. It's just, and it's like, I always wonder, why don't they tear that building down? Or, you know, why it's a big vacant apartment building. But it stood, you know, and then you call in, they get the local security to go up on it, because our mission was to continue on with where we were going. I mean, to hear the rounds go off the Humvees, you know, and PID, positive ID. And so a lot of times you get just sniper fire from apartment rooftops, and where you couldn't just open fire on it. But that night we went back out after the whole incident with the dead animal. Now it's dark, and we're going through Baghdad into the red zone, the Qarada district. We had to go to another palace of somebody out, one of al-Sadr's group, and we had to get out of the vehicles, and it was dark, and I can remember that stuff. As we're driving, it's when Iraq had won a big game, so I mean, everybody's got weapons, everybody's firing weapons, and I can remember having the headset on, and my gunner saying, sir, we got a truck coming, there's several people in the back, they're firing weapons, and you know, it's like, hey, hold your fire, make sure, you know, as long as they're in the air, going straight up, you know, and it's just, you're just constantly, it was just like you're just tense, you know, the whole time. And it was funny because that was, you know, week one. And I can remember getting the incoming rounds, you'd hear a big voice go off, you know, incoming, incoming, incoming. And, you know, you're supposed to go to the bunkers, or you're supposed to put your body armor on. Well, by the time you've been there 6-8 months, it's like, yeah, okay, you roll over and you just go to sleep. And it's you become desensitized to it a little bit, but the danger's ever present. Like the month before we came home, we were coming back up Route Irish, and my master sergeant and I, and we were heading up, and we went through this one point, and the next convoy, a quarter of a mile behind us, comes to that same point, hits an IED, command detonated IED, and you know good and well it was there when we went through, but just by, you know, the grace of God, we don't get hit, and so you don't know their selection criteria on how they do things. During the time we were there, we lost 2 Marines up north in one of our facilities up north. We dealt pretty much, I traveled all over Iraq because we had different facilities in different places with different missions that did different things. And so we'd get out and get around quite a bit. It was very risky. I mean, just getting up of it. Thanksgiving of 2007, I go to work out in the gym. And the weather there is dry. It's hot. It's, you know, as I get up to the gym, I see it's just like soaked. It's just water everywhere. And we're like, what's happened here? And I'll never forget, I mean, boy, you talk about hitting you like that. Come to find out, guy's coming out of the gym in his PT clothes, stray round comes over, tumbling in, a 50 caliber round, hits him right in the chest. Killed him dead right there. You know, and that's kind of the life you live, even on victory base. And you hear the stories of people who are sitting, waiting for a bus to take them to their, you know, they had bus transit that would take you around to your workstations. And people getting, you know, just a stray round coming in, hitting different people. My quarters I lived in, you know, there was a bullet hole through the roof. And so you know that. I know a Ugandan guard was sleeping in a bunk and got a round right through his chest while he was sleeping. So, I mean, that's always on your mind, and you're thinking about those things. You know, thinking about home, the things you're missing, the holidays you're missing, the birthdays, the anniversaries. You try to reach out. You know, there's times you can't get hold of people back home. I mean, there's time the internet went out. You know, people don't realize. The internet, we went probably 2 months without shaving cream. We don't know, never did figure out what happened, but every one of the PXs, you know, so you have to kind of figure stuff out. It's a different, I mean, you're in a moment. You know, I think somebody said life's a series of moments. And we were living in that moment, and there's no way of escaping it. You're in it. You deal with it the best you can. You know, as a law enforcement officer, I go to fatal crashes, you know, and use that gallows humor to get you through it. You kind of learn to do that stuff over there. One of my sergeants, His area kept getting probably the most. It was like the rocket magnet of the living quarters. And he actually went in. People got hit. He pulled a guy out of the latrine. They got hit while he was sitting in a stall. Had another one. Some people getting ready to go home the next day, and they were traveling one of their NTVs, non-tactical vehicles, and a rocket came in, hit the bed of it, and ended up nearly killing them. And he gave life-saving first aid, so he ended up getting an Archon with Valor for saving their lives. You know, the things that people take for granted, they don't get. You know, that small percentage of us that serve from meals. KBR feeds you pretty good over there. You got the workout facilities, but it's like Groundhog Day, you know, except for those moments of sheer whatever. It's like Groundhog Day. And, you know, you just can't get up and go do what you want to do when you want to do it. You lose all that freedom. You know, even as a colonel, there's, you know, restrictions that we have, where you can go, where you can't go. Hey, you better be in uniform. You got to have your, you know, your weapon with you everywhere you go. You got, you know, eyes in the back of your head. You're around this whole group of people, especially when you go outside the wire. You know, dealing with the detainees. We were basically fighting the enemy every day inside the wire. And we had, you know, a numerous amount of them were Al-Qaeda, foreign fighters that were there. Some of them were just, you know, Iraqis that during the surge just got rolled up. You know, you got a family and you're just happen to live in a bad neighborhood. And unlike, you know, where as a policeman, I'd go roll in. If I know you're a bad guy, okay, I arrest you, I take you, you know, to jail. Well, over there, well, if you're bad, that means they must be bad and they must be bad. And you'd find a lot of these people would get rolled up. And it made them ripe for recruitment and things. But these guys would get released. They go through the different boards we'd have, and we'd get them back out. And in a lot of cases, they got job skills while they were in there, and families could come visit them. I mean, we did the detention thing right, the care and custody thing. Can't really even think of any complaints we had while we were there. General Nevin would, at 3 o'clock in the morning, it was not uncommon to have him go over and walk the tiers. And the guards would be like, oh my God, the general's here, 3 o'clock in the morning. But that word spread. And so that was a whole different, you know, command climate than, you know, during the era when Abu Ghraib happened.
So with all of those attacks and excuse me, contacts, how did you manage the morale of not only your subordinates but also your superior ranking officers?
Morale at the time, I mean, we get shorts. You find, let's say, the gallows humor. One of my sergeants is like a big kid. And he would do things like, you go over to what they call the Haji shops over on the far side, and they have all these little shops set up, and he'd got a helicopter, these little remote-controlled helicopters. And he'd fly one around the building that we were in. He would fly it all over the place and be able to land it and whatnot. And he finally, in fact, I'll never forget, he was waiting for the day that they got the Cobra helicopter in, you know, the ones he'd been waiting on. He'd been bugging them for weeks, you know, and they finally got it in. He put it on display and showed everybody. And he charged the battery up, and in fact, we had to go get the general. So the general could come in and see this maiden voyage, you know, and he cranked it all up and everything, and that thing picked up, flew forward, hit a file cabinet, and just disintegrated. And the general just looked at it and said, oh, that's broke. But, I mean, it was little moments like that that got you through all the other times. You know, the phone calls from home or to home. You know, that tight camaraderie that you have with your peers, your battle buddies and such. The three, we had a lot of people get relieved on the way over there, just weren't up to speed, and we brought a S3 in our. He was one of my buddies from Bosnia that joined us later, and he was one of my best friend over there, and we another lieutenant colonel, and we stayed real tight, got through all that stuff together, you know, and you kind of share, and you get that, you know, a lot of moments. But you kind of get a sense of a greater appreciation for life, for the family, for the freedoms that we have. You know, when I was in Bosnia, I saw, you know, the opportunity of people who never voted before to be able to vote and things of that nature, and how significant that was to them. And the same thing's true in Iraq. You know, and here's today's election day, and things that a lot of Americans take for granted. You know, it's like almost like if you got to encourage people to go out and vote over there, because people are voting for the first time in their life. And, you know, it's a joy and a fear at the same time, because this threat that something bad's going to happen to But it was a different time and a different, you adjust to your environment. And the things, like I said, when you're first there, the very first day I got up, I walked out and I found out the hooch right behind mine had been leveled the week before. I didn't know because I got there in the middle of the night. And I walk out and I'm like, well, what happened to this place? Oh, yeah, a rocket came in and leveled it. Well, but nobody was in there at the time. They were at work. And it made me feel so much better, But all these things you take for granted every day, your safety, your security, you don't have. Like I said, I'm in a career where, every time I stop a car, it's like, I could be shot. I've been on, SWAT operations. Okay, yeah, you can get shot. People we know got guns. Oh, well, they're trying to kill you. On a daily basis, they were trying to, especially in 2007, 2008. But, like I said, phenomenal leaders, like I said, General Nevin. I got to go in and see General Petraeus a few times. What a phenomenal leader. I was impressed. Just his presence and the way he ran, I was impressed. It was a good time. And there's a lot of those people that you forever remember. And then there's different officers you see who get relieved over there because they just do stupid things. And it's like, really? Your whole career and you come to this point and you do this, so you didn't quite get that. As chief of staff, I had to deal with all the disciplinary issues, so you had to deal with, the lieutenants making bad choices or the lieutenants, or the senior NCOs just doing crazy things. It's like, really? What are you thinking? But you try to keep their minds in the right place. You try to keep them focused on the mission at hand, and not lose perspective. But also you had to pay attention because things that you didn't know going on, we had one of our really top performers, and all of a sudden just didn't act himself. And upon a little bit further review, you find out his spouse had left him. And I can relate, and I was able to talk a lot of them with my experiences from Bosnia, what I went through. I was able to work and talk with them because we had several of those different same type things that happen. And I could help mentor them through that a little bit and get them with the chaplain, get them through those whole issues. But probably, the experience over there was one of those things. It's kind of like basic training. It was like I wouldn't trade it, but at the same time I wouldn't want to go back and go through it again. And thank God that I made it home safe. We had some rocket strikes. We had some close calls, many close calls. But at the end of the day, I'm sitting here today, and a lot of my brothers and sisters aren't and can't. Since the war, I've lost 15 service members that I've known. I've either worked with them, they've worked for me, around me, and they paid the ultimate price. And I think a lot of times that's the kind of stuff you carry with you. And I know in the last few days we yesterday and today we've talked about this stuff, and I've thought about with the interview, what are you going to say, what are you going to ask. I think probably the most significant thing we haven't really gotten to was coming home. And while we're trained and trained well, and I guess I put it in this context. Now, I know a lot of the active duty soldiers virtually go from duty to overseas, and I've talked to a lot of the guys and how they go back, because it's curious to me. As a guardsman, every time I went to Bosnia and went to Iraq, there's this train-up period that you got to go through, and they like to get you back, and you roll into Fort Bliss, and 80 days is a long time, but all of a sudden you wake up and it's time to get on the plane and go, and you're in that military culture mindset, and you're ready to go. And all of a sudden you come home, and it's a little more instantaneous. You don't have that 80 days to build up to go home and reintegrate back into your home life and such. I like the way what we did. We made a call. The Indiana Guard wanted us to come back. Of course, Camp Atterbury is a huge mobilization, demobilization site. And they wanted to transfer my demobilization to Camp Atterbury to get our people back and all this stuff. And I really, as a commander, I fought them on that. I wanted to go back through Bliss. And the main reason I wanted to go through Bliss, number one, they really treated us well there. But by going back to Bliss, we didn't have the instincts to want to go home, see our family. One of the things I know the Adjutant General does, and I love him to death, and it's one of the things I know they feel like they're doing the right thing, but all these soldiers come back and they've got a hangar that they bring the soldiers into and they bring their family into. And they're able to spend 2 hours together. After they've been gone a year or whatever, they come back and they spend 2 hours And then the soldiers go away again. They go to Camp Avery and do their, however many day demob, and the families go away again. Well, I know the kids are like, all right, I just missed mom and dad for a year, and I can see them for 2 hours, and what are you doing with my mom or dad again? Well, the way we did it, by going back to Bliss, we did two things. We were able to get our bodies reacclimated to the time that we were on, which is huge. I don't think some people realize how big a deal that is, especially the older you get. But the other pieces, we did all of our demob, so when we got on the planes at Fort Bliss and we came home, we went home. And that was good. But once you're home, it's a whole different thing. And you see things differently than you ever saw them before. And I had a tough time adjusting. The first couple of months, going any place big, Walmart, Meijer, doesn't matter. You walk in there, I just got the shakes. It's like around that many people like that, it was just, I did not feel comfortable. And it was weird. And still, every once in a while I get that still when I go into big crowds of people and things. It's just you don't feel comfortable. And here I'm a state trooper, and the first time I got back in my police car, I felt like I was going to have to, do the weave going down, the interstate system to make sure you don't get hit by an IED. But there's just things that are kind of ingrained in your thinking that it's kind of hard as you start adjusting back in. But probably my temperament with people, because it's like after what all you go through and you realize what you've put forth. I've had almost 22 months away from my family in 2 deployments. With part of that, and if you throw in Katrina, you throw a little bit more that you're actually away from your family. But and one failed marriage out of that separation. And you realize what you've put into it, and the investment that you've got in this country and the things you did. Nobody asked me to. It's all volunteer military. But then when you come back and you see what you fought for, and the people that they don't take anything for, they take everything for granted, and the things that make people upset, and there's no patience. And even the last, all these interviews doing for the elections, and you hear so many come out of the mouths, I, me, you don't hear the we. You don't hear that sense of, what are you doing for your country? What are you doing to help we, the people? And, I feel like I've contributed over 30 years. Through 2 deployments. I've got some disabilities. In fact, I think my class I'm 40% disabled. And so I've kind of paid that, they paid that price. A lot of my buddies have paid that price. And just to see people and their expectations, they feel they're things they feel they're entitled to and things of that nature, it just kind of, it doesn't settle. I'm not as acceptive of it as I used to be, I guess. I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm getting older and I'm getting cynical about things. I don't know. But, I take a look at it and I tell the story, that I hear statistics all the time about, 4% of this population, our current population of 300 and some odd million people, have ever worn a military uniform. 4%, and a whole lot. And that's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, matters not. What we got left of our World War II vets, Korean War vets, Vietnam, the current era, that all of us, 4%. Protecting the other 96%. A little over 1% on active duty at this current time. The only thing between us and tyranny and invasion and anything else is that group is standing to watch. And then you hear the different things, trying to cut benefits, trying to do that kind of things. That really stings, in this day and age. And then you hear reduction in the military and all this, and all these people that we, in a time of need, we went out and we reached out and we got them. And we brought them in, and now that, it's kind of like, hey, there you go, we don't need you anymore, but we're going to help integrate you into society. I've got friends of mine, being a citizen soldier, I had the benefit of being a state trooper, so I had, I got that Soldier and Sailors Relief Act and all those things that help keep me safe, so I have my job to come back to. But I've got friends of mine who were lawyers, doctors, who had their own businesses, don't have them anymore. Nobody's able to carry the ball for them. You got those that we've been at war for so long now. You've got those businesses who, in the early days of September, remember when I talked about the flags waving and all that kind of stuff, and oh, hey, we support you, you're going overseas to support our country. Well, as it turns out, their jobs, their companies downsized, and their jobs were taken away. And so you got all these returning veterans now who, because they've been gone, got no job. And that's the kind of stuff that's sad. And, I don't know what the answer is, but it's one of those things you see every day, and I guess it's where I feel, certain responsibility, being a senior military leader, that we ought to be able to do more somehow, some way, to improve that situation. And so I look back with great pride on the service of myself and those that I've served with. Best friendships in the world. In fact, I tell people, 28 years as a state trooper, and I just retired in July. Other than a very few handful, do I ever get a phone call from my state police, state troopers that I worked the road with. But they're my soldiers. I could pick up the phone right now, any number of them, and call them, and they'd be here at a moment's notice. And I'm the same way with them. And there's just something above and beyond that brotherhood, sisterhood that you've got. And it's kind of my experience.
So with your continued service and in your very strong patriotism, do you think that with being a ROTC commander, do you think you're continuing that?
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know what to think of the assignment to come up and be a professor of military science. I'm an OCS grad, so this was a whole new experience to me. But at the end of the day, everything we do now, we've been prepared for. I firmly believe that. And when I keep talking about my toolkit and my, experience, my broadening experiences that I've had and frame of reference that I've got, now being on campus, I'm able to sit down with all these young future leaders and pull from all these years of experience and places I've been, circumstances I've been through, and help make them better officers going out the door. As I said, when I was in Iraq, one of my biggest probably headaches at times were being a chief of staff was dealing like, Lieutenant, what were you thinking? Who trained you? Who commissioned you? How'd this happen? Well, now I'm that guy, and I take everything very serious. And one of the things we hadn't really gotten to, I know I've talked to you separately with, but I was the first in my family to be in the military. My brother then came in the military and just retired this year after 30 years, or 29 years as a master sergeant. But my 25-year-old son is in. He's actually a First Infantry Division alum himself. He got his patch with the first ID in Afghanistan, and he's currently on active duty at Fort Lewis. I've got a 22-year-old who's with the Indiana National Guard, part of the 76th Brigade. And when I look at my cadets, one of the things I challenge them with in order to commission them, I tell them that if I don't trust you to lead my sons, I'm not going to trust you to lead the sons and daughters of America, and that's kind of the litmus test I put on when I train them. And see how they demonstrate to me their leadership abilities, their decision-making, critical thinking skills, creative thinking skills, to make sure we're putting the best out there, leading the best. And so that has been very rewarding. This May, I think I'll have the opportunity to commission my 70th lieutenant in the May commissioning ceremony. And the cadets I've got right now, I'm very proud of the group that I've got. Phenomenal group of young men and women that are going to do extraordinary things. So that part is very rewarding.
What are your future ambitions or career goals?
At this juncture, I don't know. Like I said, I retired from the state police. I'm on this assignment till sometime in 2014. I've looked at everything from trying to get a law enforcement police chief's job somewhere to even the thought of contemplating getting into politics, running for public office, and see if I could serve my country in a different capacity. We're in a time where, it's we, the military, are the servants of our elected masters, who are the servants of we, the people. I think we've gotten to a point where sometimes the politics wins out over leadership, and perhaps we're at a point in time where we need more leadership injected. And I know there's a lot of veterans that are now running for public office today, and some of those, such as Alan West, is a great inspiration. Their service to their country, and it continues today in just a different capacity.
Out of everything that we've talked about, in your opinion, what is the most important thing that you've learned about throughout your entire military career?
Who I am today is a product of this journey along the way to get here. I would not be who I am today had it not been for the military, my experiences in the military, the friends, the mentors, even sometimes those that oppose you along the way make you kind of who you are today. Probably the greatest thing is I'm proud of who I am. Wouldn't trade a thing that I've done. I think it's all about, at the end of the day, I mean, you come to this world with not a thing on, not a thing. And you leave it, and the only thing you leave behind is your reputation. And I'm proud of the reputation I think that I've carved in the military and the opportunities I've had, because I feel like I've been part of something bigger than self and made this world a little bit better. And I know made this country a little bit safer, as I'm standing, elbow to elbow with those brothers and sisters that have worn the uniform as well.
Lieutenant Colonel, is there anything else about your life or service that I've not really asked you about, but you would like to mention before we close?
Not that I can think of.
On behalf of myself, then, the Cantigny First Division Oral History Project, and our fellow citizens, I want to thank you for your service to our nation and for taking part in this interview.